to IncrediTrek. Welcome to IncrediTrek. This is a video cast by fans for fans, presented to you by IncrediCon Comic and Pop Culture Fest, only on IncrediCon HV on Facebook. Thank you for joining us tonight, Friday, September, what is today? September 18th, 2020. I'm Danish House. I'm the creator of webcomics The Splendor, Life is Beautiful on webtoons.com. I'm a staff writer for trekmovie.com. With me is my co-host, Alex Hasapis, our producer on this podcast and the communications officer for the USS Henry Hudson, which is our local Poughkeepsie, New York Star Trek fan club. We're going to be coming to you from Poughkeepsie, New York once a month with 10 bricks of gold press latinum worth of Star Trek news, and reviews, and interviews. And tonight we have, I'm so excited about this, we have a special guest. We have a guest that is with us here on this broadcast. Our guest today is Laurie Ulster. Laurie is a television producer. She's a writer and a copy editor. She produced the AfterTrek, Star Trek Discovery After Show, which I loved. She writes for the official Star Trek website, for Taffeta, for Women at Warp, and many other online publications. She's the managing editor for trekmovie.com, the largest fan-run Star Trek website on the internet. She was the copy editor for the official guide to the Star Trek animated series. She just started hosting what's become my favorite Star Trek podcast of all, Star Trek All Access. Laurie, it's great to have you here on our little show. Welcome to IncrediTrek.
Thank you so much. Can you introduce me everywhere I go for the rest of my life?
That is a new service that we're offering.
Awesome. I'm in.
It's like Cameo. Okay? If I could be with you every moment of your life, then yes, I would.
That might scare us both.
That's probably true. Laurie also is I really appreciate getting to know you as a friend, and it's wonderful to have you here on our show tonight. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, I'm excited to come. Thanks for having me.
So we wanted to dive in. What we do here is we deal with Trek news and some Trek reviews and some Trek interviews. And before we dive into the Trek news and the Trek reviews, we did want to sort of let people get to know you, Laurie, and so you can folks can hear from you. You're awesome. You're the we want to talk about first, and what we're really excited about, Alex and I, is AfterTrek, the Star Trek Discovery After Show. How did you become involved in AfterTrek?
It was the greatest job I've ever had in my whole life, first of all. I was a TV producer, and I'd been out of TV. I'd switched over to digital when I had kids. I'd been out of TV for well over a decade. And my best friend was working at Embassy Row, and they had been asked to do AfterTrek. So she went to the executive producer and said, I have someone you need to meet. And I met with him. This is he just died this week, so this is a bit of a hard one for me.
Sorry.
Extraordinary guy, just absolutely extraordinary. Gave me a chance to jump back into TV, and I still remember when I said to him, it's been a while since I did TV, and he said, the only thing that's changed is that nobody hands anybody a tape anymore. Everything else is the same. So it was the most amazing group of people. I was the supervising producer of the show. Every day I woke up so excited to go to work. I quit a staff job to take a freelance gig because how could I ever not take that job? And the fact that I could, every day I was emailing the writers, asking them questions about the scripts and the shows and what were you planning? And I have the script, but this was different. So why is it different? And it was the most amazing, incredible experience. Great friendships forged on that show. Everyone there was a fan, and everyone there was having the best time ever.
Wow.
That's great.
It certainly seemed that way watching the show. You guys really seem to be putting your heart and soul into it.
We really were. It was so much fun. We were so excited to have all those people on, that we were watching every week and seeing the episodes. We saw rough cuts and final cuts. So it was really that backstagey Star Trek experience I'd been craving since I was reading, the making of Star Trek when I was 10 years old.
And I wanted to kind of ask, a lot of people don't know what a producer actually does on a TV show. They kind of see a name at the beginning of the credits of the end of the show or whatever. But they don't really know what a producer does. Can you kind of expand upon what you did for the AfterTrek show?
Yeah, I mean, being a producer can be so different depending on what show you're on and what role you had. So I was the supervising producer. So while there were other people dealing with a lot of like the day-to-day, the logistics, we had a writer who was writing the scripts. We had a producer who was figuring out most of the interviews. I was basically overseeing sort of creative and functionally everything that was going on. So that was also like helping with guest questions and figuring out the order that things should be in and working with everybody. And I came up with some really bizarre ideas that everybody let me do, which was great. I remember the day I walked into my boss's, Jeremy, sweet, wonderful Jeremy. And I walked into his office. I said, I have this crazy idea. Ready? Week 1, 1 tribble. Week 2, 5 tribbles. And the director was a longtime friend of mine. We'd worked together like 20 years before, who was a big Star Trek fan. And I went, Joe. And I did the same thing. 1 tribble. He's like, I got it. It's perfect. But my job was over. So I was basically overrunning the team, overseeing the team, but reporting into my executive producer, helping come up with creative ideas to shape the show. What should the packages be? And then because I was the biggest Star Trek nerd on the team, I say proudly, I was like, I'm writing the trivia questions and I'm doing this part and I'm doing this part. So there were certain interstitials that probably could have gone to somebody else. And everybody was pretty happy that I just wanted to own them because I did.
Did you feel any pressure to prove your bona fides, to prove that you were the biggest Trek nerd in the room?
Oh, it was so obvious. I mean, everyone was a fan, but I was, at a different, I would say like Jeremy, the executive producer, and I were both the nerdiest ones for sure.
Well, and your host, Matt Myra?
Yeah. Oh, Matt was amazing. Huge nerd, huge Star Trek fan, wonderful guy. Yeah.
It was so much fun to watch him and to watch all you guys. We actually, Alex and I and some of the other members of the Poughkeepsie Star Trek fan club had the opportunity to be in New York City with you on 2 of the episodes that you guys shot there as your studio audience, and it was electric being there in the studio, watching all that go down.
It's when I watch it back, I can actually hear myself laughing on the show live because we were having such a good time in that studio. You were there when Jane Brooke was on, right?
Oh yeah,
I remember that. And then who was the other guest when you were there?
I was only there for Jane Brooke, but Alex, were you there for both or?
No, I was actually not a member of the club at the time.
Oh,
but
Aw.
Okay, history. I missed out. I hear so many great stories about it and how wonderful it was. So
we crammed people into that studio. I mean, there was no space for anybody, and I had like a tiny 1 square foot space to stand in where my binder was like hitting audience members every time I opened it to just keep track of the show. But it was phenomenal. I love live TV.
My question with the tribbles, I remember watching the show and watching the tribbles just in the background. You didn't make a big deal about it. You didn't tell anybody, but it just was there. Every week there's more tribbles. Where in God's name did you get all those tribbles?
We made them. It was crazy. Eliza, who was our associate producer, was really a very crafty person. And so we bought a few and they were outrageously expensive. And she was like, that doesn't make any sense. So she bought a huge thing of fur and cut out a pattern. And then she had us, I said, I'm going to make one. You got to teach me to make one. So we all started making them, but she made most of them. And we decorated them for Halloween. We gave them little costumes. And then we ended up giving them away to guests because there were so many of them. And I have a few here at home now.
Laurie, you recently, I don't know if you did this work recently, but recently it came out, the official guide to Star Trek, the animated series. And you were the copy editor on that project?
I was. That was my first big copy editing job. And it was Rich and Aaron who wrote the book. Aaron designed it and Rich wrote it. And they did such an amazing job. And they asked me to be the copy editor and sold that idea to the publisher, which it's actually opened up great avenues to me because I've copy edited. I just finished my 3rd book now.
wow.
with the same publisher. So that went really well. But yeah, those guys, they worked so hard on that for so long. And boy, did I watch a lot of episodes for them of the animated series.
So was that a pleasant experience or an unpleasant experience?
It was tough. It was my first big copy editing job, and stuff was getting changed all the time. And the animated series is like the kind of show that it's not maybe binge friendly.
No.
Because it sometimes feels like a bit of a parody of Star Trek. So so you're watching it and you're appreciating it and you're interested in it, but there's a point at which you're like, I just can't, I can't watch it anymore. But I mean, it was wonderful to be working on a Star Trek book and to be contributing to something like that. And I think it turned out great. The funny part is that the page they did not ask me to look at, some pages came in after I finished and I never got to see them. And one of those pages was the one with the credits where they misspelled my name.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm still hoping for a second edition.
The revised edition.
Yeah, because they spelled my name wrong. Oh, well.
Can't take it away from you, though.
No, it was great. I'm very happy that I could be a part of something like that. I think the book is beautiful. They did an amazing job.
I saw some pages from it on an article on TrekMovie.com, and it looked really lavish, well illustrated, and a real deep dive into a show that I think a lot of Star Trek fans have not really seen.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Canada, so we didn't even get it. I couldn't watch it. But I would recommend to anyone, like, it's worth picking up just because you don't even have to watch every episode to appreciate the book and all the detail and all the research. And they had a lot of fun with it too, with like great lines and great moments and wondering what the heck was going on in part of it. So I highly recommend it.
Laurie, what was your first contact with Star Trek? When you how did you become a fan of Star Trek?
It's a tough one to pin down to a specific moment, but my mom used to watch it. In fact, she used to tell me that she watched it when she was pregnant with me, but that actually isn't possible because I was born 6 months before it premiered. That said, she goes, "Oh, that was when I was having my kidney stones removed or something." And I'm like, "Yeah, thanks." But we used to watch it with her when we were kids, and we all enjoyed it and loved it. My siblings and I loved it, but I went berserk. Like it was on twice a day. I was combing through TV Guide every week, noting which episode was on. I had to be there when it was on. I was buying all the books and reading all the books, and there weren't a ton of them back then. I mean, it was dead. It was a completely dead show. And I was so insanely obsessed with it. I took a lot of mockery. And then eventually, it all paid off. As my brother joked when I got the AfterTrek job, 40 years of useless trivia finally paid off. Which I repeated to Jonathan Frakes when he asked who wrote all the trivia questions that he was going to be asking for something. But that was the beginning of it, was original series. And then I've loved almost every incarnation since. I would say my least liked one is Enterprise.
That's fair. Alex, what's your least liked entry of Star Trek?
Well, I'm learning a lot about the entirety of the Trek universe. I'm actually pretty new to Star Trek fandom.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and for a while, actually, the original series was the hardest for me to get into. Just because it just was an old-timey production, but some members have curated some episodes for me, and I've enjoyed those much more than just going piece by piece through the first season. And so I've come around to that.
I hate to say it, but for me, it is the animated series. I did watch the animated series, a little bit of it when I was a kid on TV. But even then, I'm an illustrator. I love drawing and I love animation. And even then, the extremely limited animation of the show really sort of rubbed me the wrong way. And so I love Kirk and I love Spock and I love McCoy and all of them. I grew up watching the original series in reruns. That was my first entry into Trek, but the animated series was always very difficult for me. Even last year, I was looking for something to watch while I'm at the gym, and I decided to pick up the animated series and try to make my way through it. And like Laurie said, it's for me, it was tough to binge watch, and it was tough for me to kind of just be grinding a couple episodes a day on the treadmill, and then it was very difficult for me. So
what I recommend for that? Watch in a group.
Okay.
So we did, Trek Movie has been doing Sunday night viewing parties, and we're watching pretty much every not the new ones, but all of the old ones, and sometimes movies. And one night we did 2 animated series episodes, and it was a hoot. It's very fun to watch with a group of people.
Cool.
It makes a big difference.
Our club has been doing something similar in these unprecedented times, where we watch some episodes together, and that's how I got a lot of my appreciation for the original series back. I had never actually seen the Trouble with Tribbles, even though I understood the pop culture reference for so long. Actually, watching that episode was just so amazing. Just seeing how much comedy kind of flowed from that one episode.
I feel like I want to send you a list of original series episodes that you would like, that are intense. We just watched Day of the Dove as a group.
Oh, yeah.
And it's such a great episode for the times that we're in now. It's perfect.
Alex, I saw you had a second question on your list I thought was really good. Do you want to ask?
Oh, sure. With Discovery, the first season came out a few years ago, and AfterTrek was kind of the front line, like the ambassador for connecting fans to the new generation of Star Trek actors. Really important, especially in this day and age, to kind of have those parasocial relationships with your with media personalities. Like, how did you feel about that opportunity? And do you have any special moments that you can remember that you enjoy, where you really feel like you showed off the personalities of these actors?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, everyone who came on was so authentic and so funny and totally up for having a good time, which helped. I mean, I remember when, we'd been waiting for Sonequa for so long because she didn't come on, I think, until our mid-season finale or something. And she came on, and we'd all been waiting. And she was standing at the far end of our office because we filmed on Sundays. There was nobody else around but our group. And a bunch of us were at the far end, and we saw her, and we just started clapping because we just got so excited. And then she saw us, and she started clapping. And then we all sort of started moving towards each other. And then she said, "I love your show." And we said, "We love your show." And she said, "Star Trek family." And we all just got so excited. But there were so many moments like that were so much fun, with different cast members laughing, hanging around, doing stuff between, in the commercial breaks that we had. So it was, I mean, I can't even express how exciting it was to meet all those people, and Doug Jones being just so absolutely delightful, and Ted Sullivan, who was a writer on the show, who I'm still in touch with, and who was so generous with so much of his time, just sending me these insanely I've kept everything, these very long emails explaining all the decisions they made for the show. And so I really felt like we were helping connect sort of new Star Trek fans to the older world of Star Trek, and old Star Trek fans to the newer world of it. So it was a really special opportunity. And I also was drinking with Jane Brooke. After the show, she said she'd never done a shot before.
Oh.
So it was Jeremy and Matt Myra and me and Jane, and we were out quite late drinking. And she was obsessed with the whole working mom thing, because she's a working mom. And we ended up bonding, drunken bonding over being working moms who always had to do everything.
I loved when we were there at AfterTrek, we got to meet Jane Brooke and Ted Sullivan. Those were the 2 guests. And I really loved getting to know both of them. And they were so, I mean, I say getting to know, we spent, maybe 5 minutes with them one-on-one, but they were just so generous with their time and so overflowing with fun that it was really neat to get to see them and get to know them a little bit.
Yeah, he's a gem. He's writing for Riverdale now.
Yeah, I know. Which I mean, I haven't seen Riverdale, but I've heard it's quite the interesting take on the Archie legend.
Oh, it's definitely a modern spin.
Yeah. Laurie, when you think about, we're going to segue shortly into talking about Lower Decks and Trek news, but when you think about your career, right, your career trajectory, do you have like a bucket list of things you'd like to do in your career that like what are the items that are just like on your wish list of projects to be involved in?
I mean, number one, since Next Generation premiered and new Star Trek existed, which it didn't, of course, for the first part of my life, I've been wanting to write a Star Trek episode. So that's my number one all-time dream, is to write a Star Trek episode. And then I'm working on, I have 2 writing partners, and we're creating a series for kids about books and writers, an animated series that involves some kind of time travel thing. So a big dream of mine is to create a show that actually means something, which is what this would do.
Yeah.
And then I just, I'm a writer who took a while to be brave enough to become the writer that I am, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I was a producer, I was a lot of things. And then all of a sudden I went, this writing I've been doing on my own, maybe it's time to try and get paid for that. So for me, it's like ideally anything I can do involved with Star Trek makes me very happy. And then I would love to be writing for television full time. I mean, I've done I don't do a lot of TV these days. I do a lot more copy editing and writing for websites and things like that. And I actually was a contributing writer on a book this year for the first time.
Oh, cool.
Which is,
can we ask what it is?
Yeah, it's coming out in November. It's called What to Watch When. And I think the subtitle is something like 1,000 shows for every mood and moment. So every writer on it had to write about 100 shows. And they hired me late. I had about 3.5 weeks. And many of the shows I'd never heard of, they were global, like shows from across the world. My category was comedy. And then when I was done with my category, they said, "Oh, could you look at this Star Trek entry for us?" And I looked at it, and it actually had the premise of the show wrong.
Oh.
So I was very glad to get my hands on that. But yeah, I would like to keep writing as much as possible. And it would be nice to produce again. I enjoy it. I love being in a studio. I love being out in the field. I love working with teams, which as a writer, you don't get to do. Mm-hmm. But for me, the top thing for me would be writing a Star Trek episode. Would be unbelievable.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
You recently started to be the host of TrekMovie.com's newest podcast, All Access Star Trek, with the senior editor, the editor-in-chief of TrekMovie.com, Anthony
He's
Pascal.
The founder. He founded the site all by himself. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you like being a podcast host? I mean, how's that been for you?
First of all, I'm so glad you like it. We're so new at it. So our goal is to get better every week. We're working really hard at that. I have so much fun. Usually after we're done recording, we just keep talking about Star Trek afterwards because we're enjoying it so much. And I look forward to the recording every week, even though there's all the pressure. So it's a blast. I mean, we'll see. We have a lot of weeks of new episodes to do. Yeah. So it's a lot of stuff on top of, I usually have 3 or 4 freelance jobs that I'm juggling at the same time, and 2 teenagers and a husband. So that's kind of busying, but it's a lot of fun. It's so much fun. I mean, you guys are having fun doing this, right?
Oh, it's great. Yeah. A lot of fun. I'm a busy guy too, but this is a fun outlet for sort of my Trek fandom. I do enjoy your podcast, and I'm not just saying that because you're my friend. And but I listen to probably 5 or 6 Star Trek podcasts in any given week, and All Access Star Trek is definitely my favorite of the bunch. You guys are very genuine, very warm. You're awesome fans. You're very positive. Sometimes Star Trek podcasts can be negative, and I'm a fan. I like Star Trek. I like all Star Trek. And so for me, to hear you guys work through these episodes from a very positive standpoint and a very intelligent standpoint. Obviously, both you and Tony have strong knowledge of storytelling and of the TV industry in general. And so, I mean, I just love hearing your insights. It's really, and it's short. It's just it's a great package, and I can listen to it I have a very short drive every morning to work, and every afternoon back from work, and in just a couple days I can listen to the whole thing. So it's really great.
That makes me so happy. I mean, that is what we're trying to do. It's certainly easy to be positive when you're reviewing episodes of Lower Decks.
Well, yeah.
So I do like Discovery. I obviously have a special place in my heart for it, especially because of AfterTrek and because I've met all the actors and worked with all of them and a bunch of the writers and producers. There are going to be things I don't like. There are always things I don't like about it and missteps that I think they make. So that'll be a little more challenging to try to talk about those in a critical way I don't want to bash anything. And I always want to try to understand the intent, but definitely I've had some issues with the show in the past where I felt they made some not great choices. But I do have a fundamental love of all the characters. So I think that will help.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you'll see, I think Tony and I are probably going to disagree more when we get to that, because probably we have different favorite characters and different favorite scenes and different things we dislike. So things might get spicy.
Spicy.
I hope so.
Actually, the podcast I'm listening to right now, your most recent one, where I just had to stop listening because I got home, was you telling Tony that I think you're going to disagree with me on this. And he's like, I can't wait to find out what we disagree on.
Spoiler, he didn't.
Oh! Oh!
Yeah, sorry.
Alex, I know you've been having mic troubles. Are you back on?
Hopefully. Do you hear me now?
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Super. Oh, you had another
about
question,
that.
I know, Alex, in the show prep.
Sorry, what was that?
You had another question in the show prep that I think would be good to ask.
Yeah, sure. I hope it's not too inappropriate or anything, or if you have any inside knowledge, but I was looking to rewatch some AfterTrek, and it's not on CBS All Access anymore.
It's not.
And I don't know why. I don't know if you know why, if it's a licensing thing or whatever, but it's still available outside of the US, which is very weird, on Amazon and on CBS All Access and Netflix, but it's not available in the US. So I think, what do you know anything about that? Know any reason or any way that it might return, or do you have any personal plans of doing something similar to that for yourself?
I have a theory for why they took it off, and I think they probably thought it was confusing with them doing their own after show. So on season 2, right, they had some kind of after show that was a Facebooky thing or something. Now they have the Ready Room with Will Wheaton, which I think makes a lot of sense. I mean, he was someone we certainly talked about for AfterTrek before Matt was hired. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to guess that that's the reason. To me, they sure spent a lot of money on it. So if I were them, I'd want to keep it. I, of course, have copies of all the episodes, which is nice.
It just had so much more of it just had a very familial and very fun energy to it. And I think it's a disservice to not have it available. Like I said, it really shows off the personalities of everyone's involved.
Yeah, I wish they'd keep it up. I think people would like it, and especially because they're putting the first season of Discovery on CBS broadcast on the anniversary of the show premiere.
Really?
And I wish that to me, that makes perfect sense. I get they wouldn't want to broadcast it maybe at that point, but definitely it would make sense to put it back in the app so that people could go from watching it on CBS to seeing this after show. I think, to me, it's like it captured such an interesting time for all those people too, because they'd done, I guess, some conventions, but it was definitely a really new thing for all of them also. And the producers and writers too. We lobbied very hard to get a writer. We wanted every episode writer on every episode, which we didn't always get, but we got a lot of them. That was really important to us.
Right,
So
new
I hope.
hashtag free AfterTrek. Get in the comments.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Let's
go
start
do
a movement. Let's march
save
it.
AfterTrek.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laurie. We want to just say that you're so awesome. The work you've done has been tremendous for Star Trek, and it's such a great honor to have you on our show. Let's talk a little bit about Star Trek news.
What you got?
So I mean, I think the big news. So our show is a monthly podcast. So we were last on at the end of August, and since then, I think the biggest news is that, of course, Star Trek Picard just won an Emmy.
Yeah,
that's pretty exciting, right? Star Trek Picard was nominated for some Emmys, and it won an Emmy for outstanding prosthetic makeup. What do you guys? So when you think about Star Trek Picard and its makeup, what are some of the outstanding bits of makeup that you saw in Star Trek Picard?
Making Romulan sexy.
Wow. I think Peyton List had a lot to do with that. And what's his name? Who's the actor?
Oh, he was the guy from Penny Dreadful. I can't remember.
Harry Treadaway.
Yeah, Harry Treadaway. Yes.
I actually think the Borg stuff was pretty impressive.
Yeah,
that's the real answer.
Yeah, yeah.
Some really cool stuff there. Yeah, so that's the big news that I found. Laurie, what do you think is the big Star Trek news of the last month as an editor for TrekMovie.com?
I mean, there's been so much. We got a new series, so that would be pretty big. I think the biggest thing we've learned about Discovery. I mean, we've learned a lot about Discovery. We've learned a lot about Strange New Worlds. The biggest thing for Discovery, I think that when they first started talking about how it was going to be, they've jumped into the 900 years into the future for the new season. And there was so much talk when the first images and trailer came out that it was about the Federation sort of being destroyed in some way and they have to rebuild it. And I think a lot of people thought that it was going to be like, oh no, but I believe in the Federation. How could it have destroyed itself? And I think the biggest new news is that it didn't destroy itself. It was an external threat.
Right. This is in the trailer for season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. They talk about the burn, right?
Yeah.
This cataclysmic galactic event. We don't know what it is, but one of the new characters, David Ayala's book, says that the burn was the moment when the galaxy took a hard left.
Yeah, there were a lot of Bernie Sanders jokes after that.
and so, but TrekMovie.com had a fascinating theory about the burn. When I read it, that night I went home and I talked about it with my family over the dinner table because it was such a fascinating idea.
Okay, I'm so jealous that you can talk to your family or at the dinner table about Star Trek.
Well, so my son and my daughter were very engaged, and my wife was like, "When can we move on to stop talking about Star Trek?"
Yeah, mine start with "When can we move on?"
Well, so Laurie,
I learned.
I guess I'm going to say this: if you're listening to this, this is speculation about what the burn is in Star Trek Discovery season 3. But Laurie, do you want to? What's this theory that TrekMovie.com has put forward about the burn?
I'm just, it wasn't just us. I mean, we saw fans talking about it online too. And then Tony and I were talking about he wanted to develop it fully. So it all goes back to a Voyager episode where they encountered the Omega molecule, which the Borg were obsessed with.
They worshipped it, right? The Borg
They were like, it was almost, Janeway kept saying, I'd almost say you were having a religious experience because Seven was so excited about the Omega particle. But basically, no one's been able to stabilize it. I think she said the Borg stabilized it for like a trillionth of a nanosecond or something like that. But when it's stabilized, it's a power source, like an unlimited power source. And when it's not stabilized, which is what happens every single time, it destroys everything, including subspace, and makes warp travel impossible. Yeah. So that would isolate all the planets of the Federation and make space travel really difficult and slow. It would also make Discovery's spore drive very valuable.
Because they don't have to travel through warp. they can just disappear in one place and reappear somewhere else.
Right. Although, I mean, again, some people are saying, well, when they first talked about it, they mentioned that it was something about subspace. Anyway, I'm not as much of a ships person as I am a character person, to be honest.
Same.
But I think it's I don't know if they're going to do it. I know that Kirsten Beyer, who knows Voyager through and through and has written all these Voyager books, is on the writing team. So she certainly knows about it. And it fits. So whether that's actually what they're doing or not, I don't know. But it does fit. And it would be, I think, it's the right balance of taking something from pre-existing Star Trek without leaning so heavily on nostalgia, which can be not a good place for them to go.
It would enable I mean, you talked about how fans were dismayed about the breakdown of the Federation and loving the ideals of the Federation. This would be a way to keep the ideals of the Federation intact in the little pockets here and there, without not keeping those intact, but saying that the Federation is just no longer easily able to be in contact with each other or travel to each other's planets.
Right. Without having to say, oh, something went wrong within it, which nobody wants. We want to, I mean, when I was a little kid watching the original series, like that ideal was the most important piece of it. It was the absolute biggest thing about the show. And I think when you ask people what draws you in, they all say optimism. And this belief, like when you're a little kid and you go to school and everybody worships the sports heroes or whatever, and being smart wasn't super useful back when I was a kid. And you see this place where everybody's valued for who they are. And there's this idea that humans evolved past the point of being petty, of being racist, of being sexist, of being violent. And then the idea that the Federation destroyed itself is very unappealing. The idea that there's some other force that came in and now the Federation's going to triumph is definitely more interesting to me and more in keeping with, I think, what Star Trek is about.
Laurie, you mentioned that sort of tongue-in-cheek that Star Trek fans, so there's been a lot of Bernie Sanders jokes about the burn. Have you heard any speculation about it having something to do with Michael Burnham?
Yeah, a little. I mean, there's a lot of criticism of the show that the whole world focuses around her. So it's usually those people who just think it's going to be more Michael Burnham. But to me, that doesn't really make any sense. No, why would he turn and say it's called The Burn? It's named after you. It doesn't really make any sense.
Especially when she's now jumped over that time period and, presumably didn't even exist during that time period. She was time traveling.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't get that criticism. I'm just gonna I'll be a little polemical on this, but I don't get the criticism of the show centering around Michael Burnham when she is the lead character. I mean, it's like it's starring Sonequa Martin Green. I mean, she's the lead. The show is about her. It's about her journey, and everybody else is a supporting character in the actual show. That's how it works. I look at Star Trek: The Original Series, and initially, at least, it was a show about Kirk. Now, Spock and then later McCoy started to get bigger roles, but Kirk was the series lead, and that's why when we think about the original series, we know the names of a half a dozen women that Kirk dated before he became a captain. We know about his brother, and we know about all sorts of other facts about Kirk's life. It was survivor of a plague, things like that we know tons about Kirk because the show's about him. He's the lead, and I guess I don't see that criticism being a strong one about Discovery. Discovery is a show about Michael Burnham, right?
It is. I think they had some ideas for her character that maybe they talked about more than they executed. And so I think that is maybe part of the problem. Part of the problem is the hype machine. I think if the show was allowed to just be a show, maybe people wouldn't have that criticism.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of you made a great point about the original series being very Kirk-centric, but I think it's a little bit of a bristling against the serialized nature of the show, and wanting to have more episodic content, and that's because of how many seasons the Next Generation and Voyager and those others and Deep Space Nine, how long those shows were, and were able to flesh out the other characters, give them stories, give them all this kind of stuff, and fans just kind of wanted to run right back into that rather than let the show tell the story that it wanted to tell.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I do think there's a certain amount of sexism and racism involved in that too.
It could be.
So it's a combination of a lot of things. And like I mean, they had this whole, to me, the whole premise they started with, which was the whole mutiny thing, I don't think played out the way that they wanted it to. So you never really understood why it was such a big deal. Like it looked like, oh, she just got in a conflict by accident. Right. And it didn't feel like the big thing they wanted it to be. And of course, we all know behind the scenes, there was all this turnover. And so that affected a lot of things. And what I'm hoping is that, and also I think making Spock the focus of season 2 came with some problems as well. So I think now season 3 is a fresh start, and I have high hopes.
I think that's the best thing the show could do, is to dislodge itself from the prequelism, the dancing between the raindrops, etc., that come with that.
Yeah, I don't think they ever really embraced being a prequel and what that actually meant.
I have high hopes that Strange New Worlds will embrace that, being a prequel, for all of its good points. I'm a big fan of what they did in season 2 of Discovery with Captain Pike and Number One and the Enterprise, and I love the short treks that they did with Pike. And so for me, Strange New Worlds is the trek I'm most looking forward to. Although I'm looking forward to Discovery because it's coming soon. I look forward to every episode of Lower Decks, but I'm very much looking forward to Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, so am I. I think I like all the actors. I'm a little nervous about them maybe trying to do too many familiar things and not enough new things. But I don't know. I'm hoping that they will just go to, it's Strange New Worlds. So don't rely on aliens and planets that we know about. Take us somewhere new. It's a huge galaxy.
And they've been able to do that, I think, in Lower Decks. We've gone. So let's talk about Lower Decks a little bit. At our last podcast, the first 3 episodes had aired, and now there's 7 that have aired as of yesterday. The episodes that have aired since our last podcast were Moist Vessel, which I have a hard time even saying the word moist.
I love saying it just because it makes people crazy.
Moist Vessel, Cupid's Errant Arrow, which was the romancy episode, Terminal Provocations with Ensign Fletcher, and Much Ado About Boimler, the most recent episode that aired yesterday or dropped yesterday, with Ghost Boimler. How do you feel about Lower Decks? How is Lower Decks? Has it scratched your Star Trek itch, Laurie?
Yeah, I was very nervous because my husband and son watch Rick and Morty, and Mike McMahon, who created Lower Decks, comes from that world, and I was nervous that it was maybe going to be too dark, too tongue-in-cheek. And then it turned out to be, I think it's exactly right. It makes me laugh. They love Star Trek so much. And so you can feel that, I think, in every pore of it. I love the animation and the way that it looks and how rich it is in terms of design, because there's always stuff going on in the background for you to look at. I mean, because we're doing a podcast about it, I'm watching every episode 2 or 3 times. I think the writing's great. And yes, I thought this week's episode in particular was, as I said on our podcast, actually, it's the first one where I was also really invested in the plot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they did. And I mean, they have the advantage because they can dip into that nostalgia and those references in a way that I wouldn't want the live action shows to do.
Right.
But this is scratching a different itch for sure. But I'm enjoying it so much, and it's very Star Trek. Don't you think? What do you guys think?
I enjoy it very much. I think I didn't know that it was a Rick and Morty person that helmed it. That makes sense. My touchstone was Futurama, um, as a very quirky kind of workplace comedy kind of show. Um, I am definitely enjoying the characters, enjoying trying to figure out who the characters are and what I like about them. Um, I think that a lot of the jokes that subvert expectations have been really bang on, the way they culminate, and I'm really excited to watch more.
I totally agree with you about Futurama, by the way. I feel like there's a strong, especially the most recent episode was the most Futurama to me, but early Futurama I think was brilliant and was also done by a lot of Star Trek fans.
Yeah, definitely. And this last episode, I mean, I've been loving Lower Decks every week. I'm laughing my head off. I have a watch party here at my house, and some of the members of our local Star Trek fan club come over, and we wear our COVID-19 masks, and we wash our hands before before the people come into the house. But we watch it together, and we talk about it, and we're just laughing our heads off. It's so funny, but the characters are so interesting too. These are characters that really love being in Starfleet, and they really love working with each other, even though they get on each other's nerves a little bit, and but they love their jobs, they love their ship, and they love exploring space. They're all about this mission to boldly go where no one has gone before, to seek out strange new worlds and new life and new civilizations. They're doing that, and they're doing that with gusto and verve and a lot of joy. I find it to be a joy-filled show, and it's fun. And we have they're short half-hour episodes. It's a half-hour sitcom, which I was talking with my kids this morning at breakfast, and we were making breakfast in the kitchen, and we're talking about how we never would have thought that that a half-hour animated sitcom would be a good format for Star Trek. But I think it's great. It's really working very well.
And I think it's very exuberant, which I like. And you are lucky because you're watching it with people. And the difference for me, sometimes I sit and I watch it by myself and I enjoy it. And then a couple times I got my husband and son to watch with me, and they're laughing so hard. And then I'm laughing so hard. So I recommend to anyone, watch it in a group, whether it's in person, over Zoom, however you want to do it. I think it's a much more fun way to watch the show. It is so funny. I mean, even just the open is so good and hilarious.
If you haven't seen the title credits for,
it took me like 2 episodes or 3 episodes to like really see what was going under. Oh, that's what's happening during the opening. The ship's getting destroyed each time, or
there's this one shot there where the USS Cerritos, their ship, happens upon a battle between the Borg and all these Romulan
yes.
birds of prey, or Romulan warbirds, and the Cerritos, it shows up there, and then they turn around and I always, to the watch party folks, I always sing, Sir Robin ran away, he bravely ran away, from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It just had that feel of okay, well, we're nobly going where a battle. See ya.
Those guys are so much better at fighting battles than we are. Let's go. Yeah, no, and honestly, like what you said about watching, not noticing the open, the whole show, I mean, it stands up to multiple viewings, and you notice different things each time, whether it's visual or it's a line or a joke. They've packed it in, and I really appreciate that.
If you're a Star Trek fan and you've thought about watching Lower Decks, but you thought, I don't know, animation is not really for me, just give it a try. That's what I would say, is give it a try and just see, right? Have a when you're walking through the mall, all these pre-COVID-19 examples come to my mind. But you walk through the mall, you go to the food court, and there's the Chinese restaurant or the barbecue place or the subway place. They give you a little piece of their wares on a toothpick, and they say, "Try this," right? Because they want you to come in and enjoy a meal there. An episode of Lower Decks is 24 minutes. Try it out. Give it a try.
We have a question from one of our viewers, Tim Scott, and it's odds on Trek actors guest starring in Lower Decks in the future. And I'm actually not 100% clear on when Lower Decks takes place and who could possibly appear. I know they know of the stories of the Enterprise and the Next Generation. I don't know if they're concurrent or if they are set after.
It's supposed to be post-Nemesis is the time period that it takes place in. And they've already confirmed that we will have some legacy folks on. And I mean, I don't know if you want me to tell you the big one.
Yeah, that's so in the trailer. So they on Star Trek.
Yeah, it was in the trailer. Yeah.
On Star Trek Day, they had they released a trailer for the second half of the first season of Lower Decks, and one legacy Star Trek character appeared there in the trailer, and the voice actor who played it was the person who played that character in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I don't want to ruin it for people because if you choose not to watch the trailer, I mean, some people do.
Yeah.
But we posted an article saying who it was, so you can always go to Trek Movie and find out.
Go to trekmovie.com if you want the good hot coffee.
Yeah. But he's talked about having other ones on, and they've had some in guest roles playing. Like, here's one that I don't think is a big spoiler because they'll be playing a different. It's Kurtwood Smith, who played 3 different roles over the course of Star Trek, is going to be doing just a completely new voice. He's also very famous as Red Foreman on that '70s show, and I love that guy.
I first wasn't he in RoboCop too?
He was.
Yes.
That's my first Kurtwood Smith role. Watching RoboCop. So Kurtwood Smith in Trek played the Federation president in Star Trek 6.
He was Anorax in
Year of Hell.
Year of Hell, and then he was on Deep Space Nine. It was like Thrax or something like that. It was one of those like where they went back into the past of Deep Space Nine.
And then the other legacy actor who we've already seen is J.G. Hertzler. J.G. Hertzler in Star Trek Deep Space Nine played Martok. He also has played a number of other roles in Star Trek as well. And he appeared in not in the Boimler episode, but in Terminal Provocations. He played an alien captain, and it was a ton of fun listening to his voice. And
they gave him an eye patch.
Yeah. Well, that was the most fun for me about Much Ado About Boimler, the latest episode. And this is not a spoiler, but one of the characters was voiced by Maurice LaMarche, who is he was the voice of Pinky in Animaniacs, or no, of the Brain in Animaniacs, and he was a huge Star Trek fan. He's the inventor of Talk Like William Shatner Day. Which is for me like every year I celebrate Talk Like William Shatner Day, and he's been a big Star Trek fan for the longest time. And we were watching the Boimler episode, and I'm listening to it. I'm like, I know that voice. Who is that? And we go to the credits, and we're watching it, and it's like Maurice LaMarche. Oh my gosh, that's Maurice LaMarche.
Yeah, if you look him up, he's done everything. He's amazing, and he tweeted about how excited he was to have finally joined the Star Trek universe.
And he does an amazing William Shatner. Just if you go on YouTube and search for Maurice LaMarche Kirk or Maurice LaMarche Shatner, you'll find some funny things. Some of them, most of them safe for work. Not all of them safe for work, but some really funny stuff that he's done there. So that's what I loved about that episode. I love a lot of things. Laurie, you said that Much Ado About Boimler was your favorite Lower Decks episode to date. What's your favorite all-time Star Trek episode?
Oh, I couldn't possibly. I always find that so hard. I'm like, I couldn't even pick my favorite series.
Okay.
Like, I can group them, but I can't pick a single one, and I certainly couldn't pick a single episode. Sometimes it's the mood you're in. Sometimes it's, sometimes it's because you want something tragic and scary, and sometimes you just want to laugh your butt off. And I think it completely depends. I mean, for the only thing I'll say is, like, the original series became part of my DNA because of how many times I watched it, and because I spent most of my childhood just absorbing it. But I mean, I'm nuts for Voyager. I'm nuts for Next Generation. I love Deep Space Nine, although I have the unpopular opinion that I prefer the less serialized, not war-y kind of episodes. Which everybody else says, that's the best part of Deep Space Nine is when they got into the whole Dominion War. And I'm like, that's my least favorite part of Deep Space Nine. But so many, I've been doing a full rewatch of it. And I mean, the first episode of Deep Space Nine is one of the greatest first episodes of any show that ever existed.
Hands down.
Yeah. It's so brilliant the way they introduced each character and the story at exactly the right pace. You get all the information, and it's so intriguing, and it's just enough for you to be able to take it in and understand it all. So, yeah, I couldn't, there's no way I could pick a favorite.
Do you have a favorite? I'm sorry. Yeah, I do actually. And it's kind of sad, but when I think about it, but my favorite Star Trek episode of all time is a Deep Space Nine episode. It's Trials and Tribulations.
Oh, that's a good one.
And why I like it the best, and I rewatch it frequently. I like it the best is because it knits together my two favorite Star Trek series, which is the original series and Deep Space Nine, and it has both. It has the science fiction-y aspects that I love. It's got the comedy elements that I love, and it's got the nostalgia. I mean, I grew up watching Star Trek: The Original Series on reruns in syndication, and we would watch Star Trek marathons as a family, and all those things that episode celebrates are the things that I really grew up on and really loved. And so, that's an episode that it both pulls on my nostalgia strings and also has the cool factor of being in my favorite Star Trek show of all time, which is Deep Space Nine.
It's also technically brilliant the way they did it. It's unbelievable.
Well, which one of us, I mean, I'm maybe a hyperbole, but which one of us hasn't wished we could walk the hallways of our favorite Enterprise, right?
Yeah.
Or our favorite starship. And to see Sisko and Dax, working on a conduit in the background on the original series Enterprise, and Kirk and Spock in the foreground, talking into one of the intercoms. And, I want that. I want to be on the Enterprise. I want to see Kirk and Spock. That would be heaven for me. I love that.
Me too. And if Dax was there too, oh my God, so fun.
The closest I've come, and Laurie and I talked about this off camera, but the closest I've come to that is walking the halls of the official Star Trek set tour up in Ticonderoga, New York, where they have all of the sets. They've rebuilt the sets of the original Star Trek original series Enterprise, laid out exactly as they were from the original blueprints from Desilu Studios back in 1966. And when you walk into that place, you feel like you are walking on board the Enterprise. And that was, for me, one of my peak experiences was being there. Actually, my peak experience was being at the original series set tour, representing TrekMovie.com, interviewing William Shatner on the bridge of the original series Enterprise. That's my peak Star Trek moment, and I'm not sure that's ever going to be eclipsed.
That's so awesome. I'm dying to get up there. I haven't been there yet, but I did get the opportunity to tour the Discovery sets before the show premiered, before I got the AfterTrek job, because a friend of mine was working on it. And just for me being on a real Star Trek set, I mean, I gave you guys some pictures from it, I think, because
Yeah,
it was just, it was so immersive when you're there. Like they really built it. It's great for the actors because it doesn't feel like a set at all. It feels like the bridge. So I was on the Shencho, I think, but it was unbelievable. So I totally get it. And I'm definitely going to get up there at some point and see that place for a tour.
Laurie, we've reached the end of our time. We gotta wrap up the show. But Laurie, can you tell us where can we find you online? What's the best place to sort of bathe in the awesomeness that is Laurie Ulster?
Oh my, it's a little intimidating. I'm on Twitter. I'm Floobish on Twitter, FLOOBISH. But you can also just, if you Google me, I have a website that I use professionally that is filled with Star Trek references. And I'm on Twitter and I'm on Instagram. My Facebook account is private, but those are the places to find me.
Fantastic. Laurie, thank you so much for being with us here on IncrediTrek. You're our very first interview, and we're very happy to have you here today. Thank you for Thanks, Alex. It's been great co-hosting with you today. And thank you for viewers and for watching with us and hanging out with us. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your questions. We're going to be back on 1 month from now. 1 month from now, we'll be talking about the premiere of season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. So that's exciting. And thanks for IncrediTrek, presented by IncrediCon. We look forward to talking to you next month. Live long and prosper.
Thanks, guys. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.